Do you know why some fruit trees are loaded branch to branch every single year while others, planted in the exact same soil, barely give you a handful of fruit? It's almost never the variety, and it's almost never bad luck. It's usually one missing nutrient, and the free fix for it might be sitting right in your fireplace or your fire pit. You've probably been told a poor harvest means you need an expensive specialty fruit tree fertilizer, that it takes years of careful pruning to see a real difference, that some trees are simply shy producers, and there's nothing you can do about it. None of that is the full story. Today I'm showing you the one nutrient most fruit trees are quietly starving for, the free source of it you're probably throwing away, and exactly when and how to apply it for the biggest possible difference in your harvest. Stick around, because at the end I'll show you the one timing mistake that can waste this entire trick, even if you do everything else right. Welcome to Senior Green Haven. So glad you found us. This channel is about one thing: helping you grow a garden and orchard that feels like your own sanctuary, using simple, affordable methods that actually work. If that's the kind of gardening life you're building, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the tips and kitchen secrets we share here. Let's get into it. Here's what's actually going on with a disappointing harvest most of the time. Fruit trees need 3 main nutrients in different amounts at different times: nitrogen for leafy growth, phosphorus for root and flower development, and potassium for fruit development, size, and sweetness. Here's the problem. A lot of home gardeners lean on general purpose or high nitrogen fertilizers, sometimes without realizing it, because nitrogen is what makes a tree look lush and green fast. The catch is that too much nitrogen relative to potassium tends to push a tree toward growing leaves and branches, at the direct expense of flowers and fruit. You end up with a big, healthy-looking, leafy tree that just doesn't produce much. Potassium is the nutrient most directly tied to flowering, fruit set, and fruit size. And it's often the one quietly missing from a typical feeding routine. It's worth understanding how most home orchards end up nitrogen heavy without anyone doing anything obviously wrong. Feeding your lawn and your trees the same way. A tree growing near a regularly fertilized lawn absorbs that high nitrogen feed through its roots too, whether you intended to feed the tree or not, using an all-purpose fertilizer year-round. The same balanced formula every season never shifts the tree's nutrient balance toward fruiting when it matters most. Skipping soil testing. Most gardeners pick a fertilizer based on what's on the shelf rather than what their soil actually needs. Before we get to the fix, it helps to know what you're actually looking for so you're not guessing. A tree that's short on potassium relative to nitrogen often looks deceptively healthy at first glance. Plenty of green leaves, decent overall growth. The signs tend to show up in a few specific places instead. Scorched-looking leaf edges. Older leaves, usually lower and more interior on the tree, may develop a browning or slightly curled edge, sometimes called leaf scorch, while the rest of the leaf stays green. Small or inconsistent fruit size. The tree flowers and sets fruit, but the fruit stays noticeably smaller than expected, or ripens unevenly across the tree. Heavy leaf growth, light fruit set. This is the big one. A tree that looks lush and vigorous, but produces far less fruit than its size would suggest. Weak flowering the following spring. Because fruit bud development happens the season before the fruit actually appears, a shortage this year often shows up as a light bloom the next spring. None of these symptoms are exclusive to a potassium shortage on their own. Leaf scorch in particular can also come from underwatering or salt buildup in soil. But when you see the combination of decent leaf growth paired with a light, small, or inconsistent harvest, a nutrient imbalance is one of the most common explanations, and it's worth ruling in or out before assuming the tree itself is just a poor producer. The fix is wood ash. The leftover ash from a wood-burning fireplace, wood stove, or fire pit. Here's the surprising part. Plain wood ash from untreated wood is genuinely rich in potassium, along with calcium and a range of trace minerals. This isn't a folk remedy with no basis. It's the same reason potash, one of the oldest fertilizer materials in history, gets its name from exactly this: ashes leached in a pot. If you burn wood at all during the colder months, you're likely already producing a free, ready-to-use potassium source and simply throwing it away. How to DIY. Only use ash from clean, untreated wood. No charcoal briquettes, no painted or pressure-treated lumber, and nothing with lighter fluid residue. Let the ash cool completely before handling. Sprinkle a thin, even layer. About half a cup to 1 cup for a young tree, up to 2 cups for a large, established tree, around the base of the tree, starting a few inches out from the trunk and extending to roughly the edge of the canopy, known as the drip line. Lightly work it into the top layer of soil, or water it in gently afterward. Apply once in late winter or very early spring before new growth and flowering begin. Design tip: spread it at the drip line, not right against the trunk. That's roughly where most of the tree's active feeder roots are concentrated, so that's where the nutrients do the most good. Cost reality: if you already burn wood for heat, this costs nothing. If you're buying wood specifically, factor that in. But the ash itself is otherwise a byproduct you'd normally discard. Total, free to next to nothing, for a potassium source that specialty bloom and fruit fertilizers charge $15 to $25 a bag for. If you don't burn wood at home, you're not out of luck. A couple of other kitchen sources can fill the same role, just with a bit more prep. Banana peels carry a meaningful amount of potassium. Chop 2 to 3 peels and bury them a few inches deep around the drip line, or dry them fully in a low oven and grind them into a powder for a more concentrated, longer-lasting version. A simple banana peel soak works too. Cover a few peels with water in a jar, let it sit for 2 to 3 days, then use the strained liquid to water around the base of the tree. Neither of these matches the concentration of wood ash tablespoon for tablespoon, so if you're using peels instead, apply a bit more generously, and don't be afraid to repeat every few weeks through late winter and early spring, rather than the single application wood ash typically needs. If you'd rather buy something specific, look for a fertilizer labeled with a higher potassium number. The third number in the NPK ratio on the bag. Products sold as sulfate of potash are widely available at garden centers and are a concentrated, gentle option if wood ash or peels aren't practical for you. Hey, quick pause right here. If you're finding this useful, smash that like button. It genuinely helps this reach more people who want real, practical ways to get more out of their fruit trees. Tell me in the comments, do you already burn wood at home? Or would this be a totally new source for you? I read every comment. We've still got which trees benefit most, plus the timing mistake that can waste this whole trick. Keep watching. This isn't a one-size-fits-all trick, and being honest about that matters. Here's how it breaks down by common fruit tree types, apples and pears. Both respond well to this approach, especially trees that have been on a steady diet of general purpose or lawn-adjacent fertilizer for years. Potassium also plays a role in fruit quality and storage life, not just size. Peaches, nectarines, and plums. These are especially heavy fruit producers relative to their size when healthy, which makes them especially prone to potassium depletion in soil that isn't replenished. Often one of the more noticeably responsive trees to this technique. Cherries. Cherries respond well too, but they're particularly sensitive to inconsistent watering during fruit development. Pairing this with steady watering matters more here than with some other trees. Citrus. In warmer climates. Citrus also relies heavily on potassium for fruit size and juice quality, though timing shifts. Citrus doesn't have the same hard dormant season as apples or peaches, so apply shortly before your local citrus growth flush rather than the late winter window used for deciduous trees. Here's the important exception. Blueberries and other acid-loving plants should not get this treatment. Wood ash is alkaline, and it raises soil pH, exactly the opposite of what acid-loving plants need to thrive. Using it there can do real harm instead of good. If you're not sure about your soil's current pH, a simple soil test is worth doing before you start any new feeding routine, wood ash included. It takes the guesswork out completely. Potassium alone can make a real difference, but it works best as one piece of a bigger picture. 2 habits worth pairing with it. Dormant season pruning. A tree with dense, crowded, overlapping branches spreads its energy, and the sunlight reaching its leaves, much less efficiently than an open, well-structured one. Removing crossing branches and thinning overly dense areas during the dormant season lets more light reach the leaves that remain, which directly supports the sugar production that potassium then helps deliver to your fruit. Combine your wood ash application with your late winter pruning, since you'll already be out there working on the tree at the right time of year for both. Fruit thinning after fruit set. It might feel counterintuitive to remove young fruit on purpose, but a tree that sets more fruit than it can properly support often produces a large quantity of small, mediocre fruit, instead of a smaller quantity of large, high-quality fruit. Thinning young fruit down to a reasonable spacing redirects the tree's resources into fewer, better fruit. A quick note on pollination. No amount of nutrition fixes a pollination problem. If your tree flowers well but still sets little fruit, and you've ruled out a nutrient imbalance, consider whether it needs a compatible pollinator variety nearby, or whether local pollinator activity around bloom time is limited. Here's the timing mistake I promised, and it's an easy one to make. Applying wood ash too late in the season, after a tree has already flowered and is actively fruiting, mistimes the nutrient boost for when the tree actually needs it most, which is during flower and fruit bud development earlier in the season. Late applications also risk pushing a burst of new growth right when a tree should be focusing its energy on ripening fruit instead. The other common mistake is simply using too much. Wood ash is concentrated, and piling on far more than recommended can spike your soil's pH too quickly and actually stress the tree instead of helping it. Stick to a thin layer once a year at the right time. This isn't a more is better situation. How long until I actually see a difference? Flower buds for a given year's harvest typically develop the season before, so a late winter application often shows its clearest effect the following year, not necessarily the very next bloom. Can I use this on a young, newly planted tree? Use a much lighter hand, a few tablespoons, rather than a full cup. And wait until the tree is a couple years established before starting a regular routine. What if my tree still isn't fruiting well after trying this? Then this specific fix likely isn't the answer. Pollination issues, inadequate sunlight, tree age, and pest or disease pressure are all separate, common causes no amount of potassium will resolve. So there you have it. One of the biggest, most overlooked reasons fruit trees underperform, and a completely free fix that's probably sitting in your fireplace right now. From understanding why nitrogen-heavy feeding can quietly work against your harvest, to timing your wood ash application for late winter instead of mid-season, this is a simple, low-cost habit that can make a real, visible difference in how loaded your trees are next season. Completely simple, completely free, completely worth doing before your trees break bud this year. Which of your trees are you trying this on first? Tell me in the comments. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. Come join a community of gardeners getting more out of every tree, every season, without spending a fortune doing it. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Now get out there and grow something amazing. I'll see you in the next one.